Chikchan Roy. De la fin ban kich ban koi kung. Duok emo rong mot kach dang kunak ko the. Twada them chiu sao han veo kak fan lich su. Kem fachi tit han vieve and hoa cataphile. Fantich sao han kak ka chuyenmava kak ly thuet tom ly. Varmo rong fan tuong thuet tong the de tau ramot tre nium em tonton dien va dam chim. Dapung yu ka ve du di quaban. Start of script. Beneath the city of Paris, the city we know as La Ville Lumière, the city of light, a global epicenter of art, love, fashion, cuisine, and revolution, there is another Paris. A dark twin, a silent, sprawling, and skeletal negative of the vibrant metropolis that glitters and hums on the surface. While millions of people walk the sunlit boulevards, admiring the architectural splendor of the Eiffel Tower, the grandeur of the Louvre, and the triumphal majesty of the Arc de Triomphe, another world exists right under the soles of their shoes, a world of absolute, profound, and primordial darkness, a world of oppressive, unyielding, and sound-absorbing silence, and a world of bone, so much bone. This is not a metaphor, not a poetic flourish to set a scene. It is a literal, physical place, a subterranean labyrinth of tunnels, galleries, chambers, and crypts that stretches for hundreds upon hundreds of kilometers, forming a complex and largely unmapped network that snakes beneath the bustling streets like a vast, petrified, and forgotten root system. This is the realm of the Paris catacombs. When most people hear the words Paris catacombs, their minds immediately conjure an image of the famous and undeniably macabre tourist attraction, the official ossuary, located in the 14th arrondissement, where visitors descend a long, seemingly endless spiral staircase and walk along a designated, well-lit path, flanked by carefully, almost artistically arranged walls of human skulls and femurs. And that place is indeed fascinating, a chilling and unforgettable memento mori, a visceral reminder of our own mortality. But it is only a tiny, curated, and deeply sanitized fraction of the whole. The official tour covers roughly 2 kilometers of tunnels. The entire network of ancient quarries beneath Paris? The most conservative estimates place it at over 250 kilometers, or 150 miles long. Some cataphiles, the explorers who know it best, claim it's much, much larger. This is where the true mystery begins. This is the Forbidden Paris, an underground empire whose vast majority is strictly illegal to enter, dangerously unstable, and home to a history, a culture, and a collection of horrors far stranger and more terrifying than the curated piles of bone in the tourist section would ever suggest. This is a world that has swallowed people whole, erasing them from the surface as if they never existed, their disappearances becoming little more than whispers in the dark. It is a place where a secretive and fiercely independent subculture of illegal explorers, known as the cataphiles, navigate the darkness, holding secret parties, creating hidden art galleries, and seeking a form of radical freedom that the world above can no longer offer. It's a place where legends of strange creatures, disembodied voices, and malevolent, unseen entities are whispered among those who dare to venture into its deepest, most silent, and most ancient depths. And it is a place that holds the key to one of the most chilling and enigmatic pieces of found footage ever discovered: a video camera, dropped in the suffocating darkness by a man who was seemingly running for his life from an unseen terror, a man who entered the maze and was never, ever seen again. Tonight, we are not just visiting the tourist attraction. We are descending into the real darkness. We will explore the gruesome, almost unbelievable history of how this empire of the dead was created. A story born of a city literally collapsing under the physical and metaphorical weight of its own deceased. We will uncover the secret codes, the hidden rituals, and the ephemeral art of the cataphiles who have made this underworld their playground, their sanctuary, and for some, their tomb. And we will delve into the unsettling, terrifying stories of those who got lost in the catacombs, whose final, panicked moments are now a permanent and haunting part of the labyrinth's chilling folklore. This is not just a story about a tourist attraction. This is a story about a hidden world, a shadow city where the line between history, urban legend, and true, unadulterated horror becomes impossibly, terrifyingly, and permanently blurred. So take a deep breath of surface air. We're going down. To truly understand the Paris catacombs, to grasp their scale and their significance, you first have to understand what lies beneath the limestone bedrock upon which the entire glorious city of Paris is built. Long before it was a glittering capital of empires, long before the first stone of Notre Dame was laid, the land that would become Paris was, for centuries, a massive open-air quarry. Beginning in the Gallo-Roman era, when the city was known as Lutetia, miners began to dig deep into the earth to extract the high-quality Lutean limestone, a stone prized for its beauty, its creamy white color, and its durability. With this stone, they built the city above. They built the Roman baths and arenas of Lutetia. Centuries later, they built the first fortified walls of the Louvre. They raised the magnificent spires and vaulted ceilings of Notre Dame Cathedral. They constructed the grand, ornate Haussmannian apartment buildings that line the iconic boulevards. Paris, in a very real and cannibalistic sense, is a city that consumed its own foundations to create itself. For hundreds and hundreds of years, this mining was a disorganized, chaotic, and largely unregulated affair. It was a room and pillar system. Private landowners would hire miners, known as carriers, to dig a tunnel under their property, extract the best, most accessible veins of stone, and then simply move on, leaving behind a network of unsupported, unmapped galleries and vast, empty caverns. They left behind pillars of lower-quality stone to hold up the ceiling, but there was no grand plan, no central authority. They created a geological Swiss cheese beneath the city, a fragile and precarious foundation that the city's inhabitants, living their lives on the surface, were largely and blissfully unaware of. And as Paris grew upwards and outwards, as heavier and heavier buildings were constructed, this became a ticking time bomb. At the same time, another, more gruesome, more visceral, and more pressing problem was festering on the surface. Since its founding, Paris, like all medieval European cities, buried its dead in churchyards and cemeteries located within the city limits. It was a matter of religious doctrine. To be buried in consecrated ground was essential for the soul's salvation. The largest, oldest, and most important of these was Les Innocents, the Cemetery of the Holy Innocents. For over 1,000 years, it was the primary burial ground for Parisians. Millions of people, from nobles to peasants, from plague victims to royalty, were laid to rest here. But rest is a generous and deeply misleading term. The cemetery was horrifically, unimaginably overcrowded. In the medieval period, individual graves were a luxury reserved for the very wealthy. The common Parisian was not buried in a single grave, but was unceremoniously stripped of their clothing, wrapped in a simple shroud, and thrown into massive, open burial pits known as charniers. These pits could be 50 feet deep and hold over 1,000 bodies at a time. When a pit was full, it would be covered with a thin, porous layer of earth, and a new one would be started right next to it. The process was endless, a relentless cycle of death and shallow burial. The ground became so saturated with human decomposition, with what was known as corpse fat, that bodies were said to decompose in a matter of weeks, a process that should take years. The stench was legendary and unbearable. It permeated the entire Les Halles district, the bustling central market of Paris, the belly of the city. Merchants selling food in the market complained that their meat, milk, and wine would spoil within hours due to the putrid, miasmic air wafting from the cemetery. The ground level of Les Innocents itself had risen more than 2 meters, over 6 feet, above the surrounding streets, a literal, tangible mountain of the dead, held back from spilling into the city by a single, flimsy stone wall. People living in the apartments overlooking the cemetery complained of a constant corpse vapor that seeped into their homes, causing waves of illness and nausea. It was a public health nightmare of epic proportions. And then, in the spring of 1780, the inevitable breaking point was reached. After a long period of unusually heavy rain, the waterlogged ground could take no more. The retaining wall of one of the massive burial pits, gorged with centuries of decay, collapsed. A torrent of mud, liquefying corpses, and jumbled skeletal remains spilled into the basements of the surrounding houses. The public health crisis, which had been festering for centuries, had finally and violently burst forth. The city of Paris was, quite literally, drowning in its dead. A radical and to many deeply sacrilegious solution was proposed. The cemeteries had to be emptied. All of them. Millions of bodies needed to be exhumed and moved outside the city walls. But to where? The answer lay right beneath their feet. The old, abandoned, and forgotten limestone quarries. That same year, a series of terrifying collapses had occurred throughout Paris, with entire streets and buildings suddenly sinking into the voids left by the ancient quarries. The king, Louis XVI, had established a special commission, the Inspection Générale des Carrières, the General Inspectorate of Quarries, to map and stabilize the network. It was this commission that would oversee the two monumental tasks: reinforcing the foundations of Paris and finding a new home for its dead. Under the leadership of Lieutenant General of Police Alexandre Lenoir and, later, Charles Axel Guillemot, the chief inspector of the quarries, they began the Herculean task. They identified a stable section of the tunnels, deep beneath the then rural southern part of the city, near the Tumissoir Gate, as a suitable location. The place was consecrated by the church in a solemn ceremony on April 7, 1786, and officially named the Paris Municipal Ossuary. The press, however, gave it a more evocative and enduring name, inspired by the ancient Roman catacombs where early Christians buried their dead, the Paris Catacombs. The monumental, almost unimaginable task of moving the dead began that very night. It was a nocturnal procession of death, a nightly ritual that would continue for years. Every night after the sun had set, a convoy of horse-drawn carts, draped in black cloth and led by priests chanting the Service de Morts, the funeral service, would make its way through the darkened streets of Paris. They would transport the bones from Les Innocents and, later, from dozens of other city cemeteries: Saint-Eustache, Saint-Jean, Saint-Étienne-de-Gresto, their new subterranean home. The work was done under the cover of darkness to avoid upsetting the public and to minimize the horrific smell that arose from disturbing these ancient graves. Once at the quarry entrance, the bone skulls, femurs, ribs, a jumbled chaos of humanity, were unceremoniously blessed and then tipped down a deep stone shaft into the darkness below. There, teams of workers would collect the bones in wheelbarrows and begin the process of stacking them deep within the tunnels. This process continued for decades. The French Revolution, with its guillotines and massacres, added hundreds of thousands more bodies to the ever-growing collection. The remains of famous figures like Robespierre and Danton were initially thrown into mass graves and later transferred here, their revolutionary bones mingling anonymously with those of kings and paupers. Cemetery after cemetery was emptied. It is estimated that the remains of more than 6 million people were moved from the surface into the quarries below. 6 million souls, their names and stories lost to time, their individual identities erased, their bones mingled together to form a new, anonymous, and eternal community in the deep, silent darkness. At first, the bones were simply piled in heaps, in a disorganized and chaotic fashion, functionality triumphing over form. But a man named Louis-Étienne Héricart de Thury, who was appointed director of the Paris Mine Inspection Service in 1810, had a different, more artistic and philosophical vision. He believed this place should be more than just a grim storage depot for human remains. It should be a place of meditation, a philosophical and architectural monument to death itself, a place that would inspire reflection rather than just horror. He undertook a massive project to transform the ossuary into a kind of macabre museum, a place that was both terrifying and strangely, profoundly beautiful. He had his workers, the carriers, arrange the bones into artistic, almost decorative patterns. They created massive, stable walls of stacked femurs and tibias, using them like bricks, and then created friezes with neat, geometric rows of skulls, their hollow eye sockets staring out into the darkness like a silent, eternal audience. They built massive pillars out of bones. They even created furniture and sculptures from skeletal remains, like a giant barrel-shaped monument in the center of a crypt, constructed entirely of skulls and shin bones, known as the tonneau, or the barrel. He also created a special display for the bones of those who had died during a specific massacre, trying to keep some semblance of order. Héricart de Thury was a man of the Enlightenment, and he also inscribed philosophical and religious quotes on stone plaques throughout the tunnels, placing them among the bones as reminders of the fragility of life and the inevitability of death. Quotes from poets, philosophers, and the Bible, in French and Latin, guide the visitor through a meditation on mortality. The most famous of these is the one that still greets visitors at the entrance to the main ossuary, a stark and unforgettable welcome. Arrête, c'est ici l'Empire de la Mort. Stop, this is the Empire of the Dead. It was under his visionary, if macabre, direction that the catacombs became the haunting, strangely beautiful, and philosophically profound place that the first intrepid tourists including Napoleon III and the Emperor of Austria began to visit in the 19th century. But this, the official ossuary, the l'Empire de la Mort, as fascinating and overwhelming as it is just the beginning of our story. It is the public face of a much larger, much more dangerous, and much more mysterious world. The true Paris catacombs, the forbidden network known to a select few as the Carriers de Paris, is where our journey into the unknown truly begins. Beyond the 2 kilometers of the official tourist section lies the Forbidden Zone. An estimated 99% of the entire underground network is strictly off-limits to the public. And for very good reason. It is a true classical labyrinth. The tunnels are unlit, unmapped on any public record, and often dangerously unstable. They twist and turn in a disorienting, 3-dimensional maze, some so narrow that you have to crawl on your stomach through mud and bone fragments to get through, a maneuver known as a chatière or cat flap. Others open up into vast, cathedral-like caverns left by the ancient miners, their ceilings disappearing into the blackness above. Many sections are prone to sudden, catastrophic collapse, a phenomenon the French call a fontis, where the ground simply gives way. And many of the lower tunnels are partially or completely flooded with cold, stagnant, and dangerously unpotable water, requiring explorers to wear full-body waders. It is a profoundly dangerous place to enter without an expert guide, a detailed map, and the right equipment is to risk getting lost forever in the crushing, absolute, and indifferent darkness. And yet, people go down there. They have been for decades. They are known as the cataphiles. The culture of the cataphiles is a fascinating, complex, secretive, and deeply Parisian subculture. It's a loose, often fractious community of urban explorers, artists, historians, partygoers, and general thrill-seekers who have made the forbidden quarries their own personal playground, their sanctuary, and their obsession. They are not typical tourists. They know the secret, unofficial entrances, a nondescript manhole cover in a quiet side street pried open in the dead of night, a hidden door in the basement of an old building, a forgotten maintenance shaft in a public park. They descend into the darkness, sometimes for days at a time, equipped with powerful headlamps, always with backups. Detailed hand-drawn maps that have been passed down and updated for generations, protective waiters, and enough food and water to survive an unexpected delay. Down in the silent, cool, and unchanging darkness, a world with a constant temperature of about 14 degrees Celsius, 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Far from the rules, regulations, and surveillance of the surface world, they have created a hidden society with its own geography, its own language, and its own culture. They have given evocative names to the different tunnels and chambers. There's the beach, La Plage, a large sandy cavern where they can relax, the cellar, Le Cellier, a room with stone benches perfect for resting and sharing a meal, the antechamber, a famous meeting point, the Hall of the Saracens, the castle. They have established specific rooms for specific purposes, rooms for parties, rooms for quiet contemplation, rooms where they can gather, share food and wine, and talk for hours in the cool, profound silence. They are driven by a complex mixture of motivations. Some are historians and preservationists, meticulously seeking out old quarry inscriptions, forgotten historical sites from the French Resistance who used the tunnels as hideouts, or German bunkers from the World War II occupation. Some are artists who use the stone walls as their canvas, creating elaborate, beautiful paintings and intricate sculptures that will only ever be seen by other members of the cataphile community. Their art as ephemeral and hidden as the Tibetan sand mandala. Some are just looking for the ultimate escape, a place of total freedom and profound silence, a meditative retreat from the noise, the stress, and the constant connectivity of modern life. They have their own rules, their own unwritten code of ethics. The first and most important rule is silence and secrecy. You never, ever reveal the location of the entrances. Betraying an entrance is the ultimate sin, one that will get you ostracized from the community forever. The second rule is respect for the environment. You don't vandalize the quarries, you don't leave trash behind, and you show absolute respect for the dead whose bones you might encounter in the deeper, more remote ossuaries. But as with any subculture, there are different factions and often conflict. There are the purists, the artists, and the historians who seek to preserve the quarries. And then there are the partygoers, the weekend warriors, and the vandals, known pejoratively as cataclasts, who use the catacombs for illegal raves and parties, leaving behind a mess of beer bottles, spray paint, and garbage that infuriates the more serious cataphiles. There is even a special, dedicated police force, officially the ERIC, Équipes de Recherche et d'Intervention en Carrières, but known colloquially to everyone as the cataflics, a slang combination of catacombs and flic, the French word for cop, who patrol the tunnels, trying to catch and find trespassers. It's a constant, high-stakes game of cat and mouse, played out in the pitch-black darkness deep beneath the streets of Paris. The cataphiles have uncovered some incredible, almost unbelievable things in their explorations. The most famous example of this occurred in August of 2004, when police on a training exercise in a remote section of the tunnels stumbled upon a fully equipped, 400-square-meter underground cinema. It had a large screen, professional projection equipment, tiered seating carved directly from the limestone, and an adjacent, fully stocked bar and restaurant, complete with tables and chairs. The entire operation was powered by electricity that had been expertly and illegally siphoned from the city grid above. When the baffled police returned a few days later with investigators from the electricity board to dismantle the site, everything was gone. The power lines had been cut, the equipment had vanished, and a note was left on the floor. It read, simply, "Ne cherchez pas," do not search. The mysterious artistic collective responsible for building this secret cinema, who called themselves La Mexicaine de Perforation, was never identified. But the world of the cataphiles is not all clandestine art projects and adventurous exploration. The dangers are very, very real. The risk of getting lost is paramount. In the darkness, the tunnels all look the same. A single wrong turn can lead you into a section of the maze with no exit, or into a series of tunnels that loop back on themselves endlessly. Your flashlight batteries could die, plunging you into a darkness so complete, so absolute, it feels like a physical substance pressing in on you. You could slip on a wet rock and break a leg. And down there, in the absolute sound-absorbing silence and the constant, chilling cold, no one will ever hear you scream. And this brings us to the darker side of the catacombs. The stories of those who went in and didn't come out. The stories that serve as chilling cautionary tales for every aspiring cataphile, whispered around campfires in the deep chambers. One of the oldest and most persistent legends is that of Philibert Aspert. He was a doorkeeper at the Val-de-Grâce Hospital during the height of the French Revolution's reign of terror. The story goes that on November 3, 1793, he ventured into the quarries through a staircase in the hospital's courtyard. His motive is lost to history, though the popular legend, likely apocryphal, claims he was in search of a hidden cache of old, valuable chartreuse liqueur that was rumored to be stored in the monastery's cellars, which were connected to the quarries. He went in with only a single flickering candle for light. He never returned. His body was found 11 years later, in 1804, by a team of quarry inspectors. He was discovered just a few meters from an exit, but in a different network of tunnels from where he entered. He was identified by the hospital key ring still hanging from the tattered remains of his belt. It's believed his candle simply went out, and in the total, disorienting darkness, he became hopelessly lost and wandered until he died of starvation, hypothermia, or sheer terror. A tombstone was erected on the exact spot where his skeleton was found, and it remains there to this day, a chilling and poignant warning to all who pass it. À la mémoire de Philibert Aspert. Perdu dans cette carrière le 3 November 1793. In memory of Philibert Aspert, lost in this quarry on November 3, 1793. But the story of Philibert Aspert, while tragic, is a historical one. The modern era has its own, even more unsettling tale. A story that comes to us not through legend or historical record, but through the cold, unblinking, and impartial lens of a video camera. This is the enduring, terrifying mystery of the Paris catacombs' lost man, found footage. Sometime in the late 1990s or early 2000s, a group of experienced cataphiles were exploring a remote, dangerous section of the quarries known to insiders as the Catacombs of the Catacombs, far from any tourist path, deep in the forbidden network. There, lying in the mud and debris on the tunnel floor, they found something. It was a video camera. The camera was damaged from the fall, but the tape inside was miraculously salvageable. When they returned to the surface and played it, they were confronted with one of the most disturbing and profoundly inexplicable pieces of found footage ever to surface. The video, which has since been uploaded to the internet and analyzed, debated, and dissected by countless armchair detectives, is about 40 minutes long. It is shot entirely in the first person. The camera is held by an unidentified man who seems to be exploring the catacombs alone, his first and most critical mistake. For most of the video, he appears calm, if a little nervous, which is understandable. We see the world through his eyes. We see him walking through narrow tunnels, panning the camera across walls covered in cataphile graffiti and old, cryptic quarry marks. We hear his steady, rhythmic breathing. He seems to be following a map or a plan, occasionally pointing the camera at specific markings on the wall as if to orient himself. But then, about halfway through, the atmosphere of the video changes dramatically and chillingly. The man's breathing becomes more rapid, more shallow. He starts walking faster, his confident stride turning into a nervous, stumbling jog. He seems to have become lost, disoriented. He pans the camera around wildly, whipping it from side to side, as if searching for a landmark or a turn that he can no longer find. The audio is now dominated by his ragged, panicked breathing and the sound of his feet splashing through the shallow puddles on the tunnel floor. He is clearly in a state of growing, unraveling terror. Then comes the most chilling part of the entire ordeal. He starts to run. He is running blindly, desperately, through the narrow, twisting tunnels. The camera shakes violently, the beam of his headlamp bouncing erratically off the stone walls, creating a disorienting, nightmarish, strobe-like effect. He never says a word, never cries out, but his panic is palpable, infectious. It is a pure, animalistic terror. He seems to be running from something. You can't hear any other footsteps, no other voices, no sound of pursuit. But his terror is absolute. It is the terror of a prey animal fleeing a predator it cannot see. Finally, in the last few seconds of the footage, he drops the camera. It falls to the muddy floor, the lens pointing back up the tunnel he just came from. For a few brief, horrifying moments, we are left staring into the dark, empty tunnel. The sound of his frantic, running footsteps continues, growing fainter and fainter as he disappears deeper and deeper into the blackness of the maze. And then, there is silence. The tape continues to run for a few more moments on the empty, silent, and menacing scene, and then it cuts out. Who was this man? What was he doing alone in such a dangerous part of the quarries? And most importantly, what was he running from? Did he hear something? See something? Did he encounter another, more hostile group of explorers? Or did he simply succumb to a catastrophic panic attack? The crushing weight of the darkness and the sudden, overwhelming realization that he was hopelessly lost finally shattering his mind? No one knows. The man in the video has never been identified. No missing person report from that time seems to match the case. No body has ever been found in that section of the quarries. The camera is the only evidence that he ever existed. He ran off into the darkness, and the catacombs simply swallowed him. He became another ghost, another story whispered in the dark, a modern Philibert Espert for the digital age. The footage is a perfect crystallization of the deepest, most primal fears associated with the catacombs. The fear of being lost, the fear of the dark, and the fear of the unknown, the terrifying, creeping fear that you are not alone down there. And this leads us, inevitably, into the realm of the paranormal. The Paris catacombs, an underground cemetery holding the intermingled remains of 6 million people, is, not surprisingly, considered by many to be one of the most haunted places on the face of the earth. The stories told by cataphiles, police, and even some of the official tour guides are numerous, consistent, and deeply unsettling. Many explorers report auditory phenomena. The most common is the sound of disembodied whispers. People exploring the tunnels, alone or in groups, will hear what sounds like a voice whispering right behind them, only to turn and find nothing but darkness and the steady dripping of water. Others have reported hearing faint chanting or singing, like the ghostly echoes of the funeral processions that once brought the bones down into the quarries centuries ago. Then there are the physical sensations, which can be even more disturbing. A sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature in certain chambers, a cold that seems to seep into your bones and drain your energy. The feeling of being touched, of an icy, unseen hand on your shoulder, or something brushing past you in a narrow tunnel where there is no room for anything else to be. Some experienced cataphiles refuse to go into certain sections of the network, claiming they have a bad energy, a palpable feeling of dread, sorrow, and malevolence that is physically and emotionally draining. And, of course, there are the apparitions. Shadow figures are the most commonly reported sighting. Dark, human-shaped forms seen darting at the very edge of a headlamp's beam, or standing motionless at the far end of a long tunnel, only to vanish completely when light is shined directly on them. Some people have reported seeing glowing orbs of light, often blue or white, floating through the tunnels, or strange, inexplicable mists that form and dissipate for no apparent reason in the still air. One of the more specific and terrifying legends among the cataphile community is that of the thing that follows you. The story goes that if you spend too much time alone in the deepest, most silent parts of the quarries, something might take notice of you. It starts with a simple, prickling feeling of being watched. Then, you might hear a faint sound behind you, the scuff of a footstep that isn't yours, perfectly mimicking your own pace. You stop and it stops. You turn and you see nothing. But the feeling intensifies. You feel a presence, walking in step with you, just out of sight in the darkness behind you. It never reveals itself, it never harms you, but it follows you, a silent, unseen, and patient companion, all the way back to the exit. The psychological terror of this experience is said to be enough to drive some people to never enter the catacombs again. Could this be what the man in the found footage was running from? The sudden, terrifying realization that he was being followed, that he was no longer alone in the dark, and that his silent companion was getting closer? The source of these paranormal claims is, of course, hotly debated. The skeptic will point out, quite rightly, that the underground environment is a perfect storm for creating such experiences. The absolute, unyielding darkness and the profound silence can lead to sensory deprivation, a state in which the brain, starved of external stimuli, begins to create its own vivid auditory and visual hallucinations. The constant, rhythmic dripping of water can sound like footsteps. The disorienting acoustics of the tunnels can carry sounds from miles away, making them seem close. And the sheer psychological weight of being surrounded by the remains of 6 million people can easily lead to feelings of paranoia, anxiety, and fear. The air quality is poor, high in carbon dioxide and radon, which can also contribute to feelings of unease, confusion, and even mild hallucinations. And yet, the stories persist. The experiences are too numerous, too consistent, and reported by too many sober, rational, experienced explorers to be dismissed entirely as fantasy or delusion. Whether you believe they are the restless spirits of the 6 million people whose bones line the walls, unable to find peace in their mass, anonymous grave, or the psychic residue of centuries of death, sorrow, and fear, imprinted onto the very stone of the tunnels in a stone tape phenomenon, or simply tricks of the mind in a uniquely terrifying environment, the haunting of the Paris catacombs is an undeniable and powerful part of its identity. The catacombs represent a profound and disturbing paradox. They are a brilliant solution to a gruesome public health crisis, a testament to Parisian engineering and urban planning. They are a macabre and beautiful tourist attraction, a secret art gallery for a hidden subculture, a historian's treasure trove, and a playground for those seeking freedom from the modern world. But at their core, they are a tomb, the largest tomb in the world. And like any tomb, they command a certain respect, a certain reverence, and a certain primal fear. The story of the catacombs is not finished. It is a living story, one that continues to be written every day, in the secret explorations of the cataphiles, in the new artwork that appears on the walls, and in the unsettling new stories that surface from the deep, deep darkness. The mystery of the man with the video camera remains unsolved, a chilling modern ghost story for a digital age, a testament to the fact that even with all our technology, the darkness can still claim us. The vast majority of the network remains unexplored and unmapped, its secrets still waiting patiently in the eternal night that lies just beneath the city of light. The Paris catacombs are a stark, visceral reminder that no matter how modern and sophisticated our cities become, they are built on layers of history, and sometimes those layers are dark, deep, and filled with the dead. They remind us that just beneath the surface of our well-ordered, brightly lit world, a primal chaos can exist, a labyrinth where it is all too easy to lose your way, to lose your mind, and to simply, and finally, be lost forever. What do you believe happened to the man in the found footage? Was he a victim of his own mounting panic? Or was he running from something truly unexplainable that lurks in the deepest, most forgotten recesses of the Paris catacombs? What do you make of the countless paranormal claims from this empire of the dead? Are they evidence of spirits trapped in this mass, anonymous grave, or are they the predictable products of an environment uniquely designed to terrify the human mind? I want to know your theories, so leave them for us in the comments below. This mystery is one that has fascinated and terrified me for years, and I'm eager to hear your perspectives. If this journey into the dark heart of Paris intrigued you, please show your support by liking this video and, more importantly, by subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the world's most mysterious and unsettling places. Your support allows us to keep exploring these stories that exist in the deep, dark shadows of our history. This is a place where UFOs are photographed in broad daylight, where people develop inexplicable burns and rashes on their skin, where electronic devices fail without reason. It's a place where visitors experience intense anxiety, nausea, and the unshakable feeling of being watched by countless unseen eyes. It's a forest where the trees themselves grow in bizarre, unnatural shaped spirals, right angles, and twisted knots, as if writhing in some silent, centuries-long agony. And at its heart, there is a clearing, a near-perfect circle in the middle of the woods where nothing, absolutely nothing, will grow, and where the most intense and terrifying phenomena are concentrated. Locals call it the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. They whisper stories of peasants who have wandered into the woods and vanished without a trace, of ghostly apparitions, and of a gateway to another dimension. This is not just folklore. This is a place that has been studied by scientists, photographed by engineers, and experienced by thousands of terrified witnesses. The mystery of Hoia Baciu is not a simple ghost story. It's a complex, multi-layered enigma that weaves together ufology, paranormal research, scientific anomalies, and deep-rooted historical trauma. Tonight, we will attempt to unravel the secrets of this haunted forest. We will explore the pioneering work of the biologist who first brought its mysteries to the world's attention. We will examine the most famous and credible pieces of evidence, from authenticated photographs of unidentified flying objects to the chilling accounts of missing time. And we will delve into the competing theories that attempt to explain what is happening in Hoia Baciu, from scientific explanations of magnetic fields to terrifying hypotheses about interdimensional portals. This is a journey into a place that defies easy answers, a place that forces us to question the very nature of the world we think we know. So, find a comfortable seat, lower the lights, and prepare to enter the forest. Our story begins not with ghosts or aliens, but with a man of science. In the 1950s, a biologist from Cluj-Napoca named Alexandru Sift began to take a professional interest in the Hoia Baciu forest. He was not a paranormal investigator. He was a scientist studying botany and soil composition. But as he spent more and more time in the forest, he began to notice things that his scientific training could not explain. He noticed the strangely shaped trees, the unnerving silence that often fell over the woods, and the strange physical sensations he would sometimes experience. Intrigued, Sift began a new, more unusual line of inquiry. He started bringing a camera with him on his expeditions. This was the 1950s and 60s, a time before digital photography and Photoshop. Photography was a mechanical process, much harder to manipulate. What Sift captured on film over the next decade is astonishing. He took thousands of photographs, Many of them showed strange, inexplicable anomalies. Balls of light, sometimes translucent, sometimes intensely bright, floating among the trees. Strange, milky white mists that would appear and disappear in an instant, even on clear, windless days. And most compellingly, well-defined, physical-looking objects, disks, cigar shapes, trapezoids that appeared in the sky above the forest. Sift was meticulous. He would use multiple cameras, different types of film, and would have his photos developed at independent labs. He was trying to find a rational explanation. He considered light flares, chemical defects in the film, weather phenomena. But the objects he was capturing were too consistent, too strange, and often appeared on multiple negatives taken moments apart. He was documenting something real, something that did not belong there. He also began to document the other phenomena. He cataloged the bizarre, corkscrew-like growth of the trees. He took soil samples from the dead clearing at the forest center and found nothing unusual that could account for the lack of vegetation. He began interviewing locals, collecting their stories of ghostly apparitions and strange encounters, stories that had been passed down for generations. Sift became obsessed. The forest was his life's work. He amassed a huge archive of photographs, negatives, and written testimony. He believed he was on the verge of a major discovery, something that would change our understanding of the natural world. But tragedy struck. Alexandru Sift died in 1993, and in the days following his death, his massive, irreplaceable archive vanished. Some say it was stolen. Others, that it was deliberately misplaced or destroyed by authorities who didn't want his findings to become public. All that remains are the few photographs he had already published and the testimony of his colleagues. The bulk of his life's work was lost, becoming another one of the forest's many mysteries. But before his death, Sift had passed the torch. He had inspired a new generation of researchers, including his friend and colleague, Professor Adrian Petrut, a chemist who continues to study the forest to this day. It is thanks to the continued work of Petrut and others that we know so much about the specific, recurring phenomena of Hoia Baciu. And at the heart of it all is the clearing. Imagine you are walking through the dense, dark woods. The trees are thick, the undergrowth is lush. And then you step into a space that feels utterly wrong. It is a nearly perfect circle, an ellipse in the ground about 100 feet in diameter. And inside this circle, nothing grows. Not a blade of grass, not a weed, not a single sapling. The soil is there, but it is barren. The trees at the edge of the clearing are healthy, but they seem to stop abruptly, as if respecting an invisible boundary. This is the place the locals call Poiana Rotunda, the round meadow. It is the absolute epicenter of the forest's strangeness. For decades, scientists, including Sift and Petrut, have taken soil samples from this clearing. They have tested them for toxins, for radiation, for any chemical anomaly that could explain the sterility of the ground. They have found nothing. The soil is chemically identical, but the anomaly is not just botanical. This clearing is a hotbed of intense paranormal and physiological phenomena. Visitors who step into the circle report a sudden, overwhelming wave of anxiety, a feeling of dread, of being watched by something unseen and malevolent. Many become nauseous, dizzy, and develop splitting headaches. They report strange tingling sensations on their skin. And perhaps most bizarrely, electronic devices go haywire. Digital cameras will malfunction. Phone batteries will drain in an instant. GPS devices will lose their signal or give wildly inaccurate readings. The moment you step back out of the clearing, the anxiety often lifts, and the devices begin to work normally again. It is in this clearing that many of the UFO sightings have been concentrated. It is here that people have reported seeing strange, hovering lights. And it is here that the paranormal activity is at its most intense. Some researchers have theorized that this clearing is a gateway, a portal, a weak spot in the fabric of reality. They believe that something is either coming through from another place, or that the place itself is a source of some strange, unknown energy that is hostile to both biological life and modern technology. Whatever the cause, the clearing remains the forest's most profound and unnerving mystery. To fully grasp the sheer strangeness of Hoia Baciu, we need to categorize the phenomena that have been so consistently reported over the decades. It's a place where multiple types of high strangeness seem to converge, almost as if several different mysteries are happening at once in the same location. Let's begin with the phenomenon that first brought the forest international attention: the UFO connection. While Alexandru Sift captured many images of strange aerial objects, the most famous and arguably most credible UFO photograph ever taken in Romania came from Hoia Baciu. The date was August 18, 1968. A 45-year-old military technician named Emil Barnia was in the forest with his girlfriend and 2 other friends. It was a clear, sunny Sunday afternoon. They were there to relax, to have a picnic. Suddenly, Barnia heard a strange noise. He looked up and saw it. A large, silent, metallic, disc-shaped object was hovering in the sky above the clearing. It was gleaming in the sunlight. Barnia, a pragmatic and technically minded man, was initially frozen in disbelief. His friends were shouting. He remembered he had his camera with him. He fumbled for it, and managed to snap for photographs before the object suddenly accelerated at an incredible speed and vanished. Barnia was hesitant to come forward. He was a military technician. He feared ridicule and damage to his career, but he eventually showed the photos to Sift and other researchers. The photographs and negatives were analyzed by the authorities and by independent experts. They concluded that the images were authentic. They showed a real physical object in the sky. They were not the result of a weather balloon, a conventional aircraft, or any kind of photographic trickery. The Emil Barnia photograph became a landmark case in Romanian ufology, a piece of hard, tangible evidence that something unexplained was appearing in the skies over Hoia Baciu. And the sightings continue to this day, with locals and tourists alike reporting silent, glowing orbs and fast-moving lights in the night sky. The second category of phenomena is perhaps even more personal and disturbing: the human element. The profound physical and psychological effects the forest has on its visitors. These are not just feelings. They are measurable physical changes. People will emerge from the forest with strange red rashes, welts, and sometimes even burns on their skin, despite not having touched anything unusual. There are numerous accounts of people being inexplicably scratched, with long, red welts appearing on their arms and backs as if they've been clawed by an invisible animal. And then there is the phenomenon of missing time. A group of hikers will enter the forest, planning for a 2-hour walk. They will emerge what feels like 2 hours later, only to find that 5 or 6 hours have passed. They have no memory of the missing hours. They simply lost them. The inverse has also been reported, though less frequently. The most famous story of this kind is that of a 5-year-old girl. The story goes that she wandered away from her family into the woods and disappeared. A massive search was launched, but no trace of her was ever found. She was presumed dead, another victim of the forest. 5 years later, she reappeared, walking out of the woods near the same spot she vanished. She was wearing the exact same clothes she had on the day she disappeared. The clothes were not torn or dirty, and most chillingly, she had not aged a single day. She was still 5 years old. To her, only a few hours had passed. She had no memory of the 5 years she had been gone. This story, while it has the ring of folklore, is told and retold as a potent warning about the forest's ability to warp not just space, but time itself. The psychological effects are just as powerful. The overwhelming sense of anxiety, the sudden bouts of irrational fear, the constant feeling of being watched, these are reported by almost everyone who spends significant time in the deeper parts of the woods, especially in the clearing. It's a feeling that you are an intruder in a place where you are not welcome. This leads us to the third pillar of the Hoia Baciu mystery, the spectral evidence. The ghosts. For centuries, long before the UFO sightings began, local folklore has held that the forest is haunted. Legends tell of the spirits of Romanian peasants who were murdered in the woods during a period of violent uprising. Their souls, it is said, are trapped in the forest, unable to find peace. And it seems many modern visitors have encountered them. Apparitions of shadow figures are incredibly common. People see dark, human-shaped silhouettes flitting between the twisted trees at the edge of their vision. Some have reported seeing pairs of glowing green eyes staring at them from the darkness. There are reports of a strange black fog that materializes, engulfs visitors, and then vanishes. Disembodied voices are also frequently heard. A woman's voice, sometimes laughing, sometimes weeping. The sound of whispers in Romanian, a language many of the foreign visitors who hear it do not understand. The apparitions are not always shadowy. Some people have reported seeing full-bodied figures dressed in what appears to be traditional peasant clothing, who stare at them for a moment before fading away into nothing. These consistent sightings of spectral figures lend credence to the old legends, suggesting that the paranormal activity in Hoia Baciu is not a new phenomenon, but something ancient and deeply connected to the history of the land itself. So, we are left with this bewildering collection of phenomena. UFOs, ghosts, physical ailments, missing time, strange vegetation, and electronic malfunctions, all concentrated in one small patch of woods in Transylvania. What on earth is going on in the Hoia Baciu forest? This is where we must move from reporting to analysis and explore the competing theories that attempt to make sense of the impossible. The first and most grounded category of explanation is the scientific one. Scientists like Petrut have noted that the forest has a unique magnetic field, with detectable anomalies, particularly in the clearing. Could these magnetic fluctuations be responsible for some of the phenomena? It's known that strong or unusual magnetic fields can affect electronic devices, which would explain the camera and phone malfunctions. Some researchers have also theorized that they could affect the human brain, inducing feelings of anxiety, paranoia, and even mild hallucinations. This is a plausible explanation for some of the psychological effects. Another scientific theory involves infrasound. This is sound at a frequency below the range of human hearing. It can be generated by wind passing over certain geological formations. It's been shown in laboratory settings that exposure to infrasound can cause feelings of unease, dread, and the sensation of a presence in the room. Could the unique topography of Hoia Baciu be creating infrasound that puts visitors on edge? There is also the possibility of natural radioactivity. The area has deposits of uranium nearby. Could low levels of radiation or radioactive gases like radon be seeping from the ground, particularly in the clearing, causing the health effects and inhibiting plant growth? It's a possibility, but soil tests so far have not shown dangerously high levels of radioactivity. The scientific explanations are intriguing, and they may account for some of the reported experiences. But they fall short of explaining everything. Magnetic fields and infrasound do not explain the clear, authenticated photograph of a physical craft taken by Emil Barnia. They do not explain the specific, recurring apparitions of peasants. They do not explain the phenomenon of missing time. Science, so far, can only provide partial answers. This leads us to our second category of theory, the psychological and sociological. This perspective argues that the mystery of Hoia Baciu is primarily a product of the human mind, amplified by culture and folklore. The forest, undeniably, looks creepy. The twisted, unnatural trees create an immediate sense of unease. This creates a powerful power of suggestion. When people enter a place they have been told is haunted and that looks the part, their brains are primed to interpret any ambiguity in a paranormal way. A strange shadow becomes a ghost. A rustle of leaves becomes a footstep. The concept of genius loci, or the spirit of a place, is relevant here. Hoia Baciu has a powerful, palpable atmosphere. This atmosphere, combined with the rich folklore of Transylvania land steeped in stories of ghosts, vampires, and the supernatural, creates a potent cultural feedback loop. People expect to experience strange things, so they do, and their stories then reinforce the forest's reputation, making the next visitor even more likely to have an experience. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a powerful argument, but like the scientific theories, it struggles to account for the physical evidence. The power of suggestion doesn't make a UFO appear on film, nor does it cause physical burns and scratches to appear on the skin. This brings us to our third and most extraordinary category of explanation: the paranormal, or what some researchers are now calling the extra-dimensional theory. This theory posits that the scientific and psychological explanations are not wrong, but are simply incomplete. They are describing the symptoms, not the cause. The extra-dimensional hypothesis suggests that Hoia Baciu is not just a haunted forest, but a thin place, a window, portal, a place where our dimension intersects with another, or perhaps multiple other dimensions. This is a grand, speculative leap, but it is the one theory that seems to encompass all the disparate phenomena. In this model, the UFOs are not necessarily alien spacecraft from other planets, but perhaps vehicles or entities crossing over from a parallel reality. The ghosts are not just the spirits of the dead, but perhaps fleeting glimpses into another dimension or replays of events that are bleeding through into ours. The strange physical effects, the burns, the nausea, the anxiety, could be the result of the human body reacting to the strange physics and energies of this interdimensional overlap zone. The missing time could be a result of space-time itself being warped near the portal. The clearing, where nothing grows, would be the focal point of this gateway, the place where the energies are strongest and most hostile to our form of life. This theory treats the forest as a single, unified phenomenon. The ghosts, the aliens, the physical effects, they are not separate mysteries. They are all different manifestations of the same underlying cause: a rupture in the fabric of reality. It's a mind-bending idea, one that pushes the limits of our understanding. But in a place like Hoia Baciu, where conventional explanations fail, perhaps we need to consider unconventional ones. Ultimately, the Hoia Baciu forest remains a profound enigma. It is a place that defies easy categorization, a puzzle with too many pieces that don't seem to fit. It is a place where science, folklore, history, and the paranormal all collide, and each one comes away with only a piece of the truth. The forest holds its secrets close, wrapped in a shroud of silence and fear. The twisted trees stand as silent witnesses to events we cannot comprehend, and the barren clearing waits, a patient, empty stage for the next act in its inexplicable drama. The story of Hoia Baciu is a powerful reminder that there are still deep mysteries left in this world. It challenges our comfortable assumptions about reality and forces us to confront the possibility that we know far less about the universe than we think we do. It is a place that asks a fundamental question: what happens when you step out of the world you know and into a place that operates by a different set of rules? What do you believe is the true source of the mystery of the Hoia Baciu forest? Is it a confluence of rare geological and atmospheric conditions? A powerful psychological phenomenon fueled by folklore? Or is it something more? A genuine window into another world? A place where the veil is thin and anything is possible? I want to hear your most thoughtful and your wildest theories in the comments below. If this deep, immersive journey into Romania's haunted heart has captured your imagination, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more long-form explorations of our world's most compelling and unsettling mysteries. Every subscriber helps us continue to journey into these dark corners of the map. And if you ever find yourself hiking in the beautiful hills of Transylvania, and you come across a forest where the trees grow in spirals and the birds have fallen silent, perhaps you should be cautious. Perhaps you should remember the stories, because while you might be looking at the forest and everything within it might also be looking back at you.